Today we have with us Christian Eisenbarth, the director and writer of the short film, which has won multiple awards he can tell us about, Last Day on Earth. And I am absolutely thrilled to have him on to talk a little bit about that and answer some questions for us. So welcome, Christian.
Yeah, hi Kelly, how are you doing?
I'm good, thanks. It's
Yeah.
good to have you. And I know there's so much going on in your world right now since
Mhm.
you released this magnificent little piece that I'm in love with.
Yes.
So I appreciate you setting some time aside for us to ask some deep questions and kind of see what comes out of this.
Okay, great. Yeah, let's hit it.
All right. So just to set the stage a little bit, I was happening through YouTube as we do. And lo and behold, up to the top of my feed, the short film appeared. And I think it was within a few days of you uploading it. So I was like obsessed and I watched it, paused, watched it again, paused, watched it again, and paused. And I just couldn't get enough. So I don't message people on YouTube. I messaged you. And I didn't know anything about you, who you were, how easy you are to talk to, and how absolutely adorable you are and who you are as a human being. Um, and you wrote me right back, and I was just blown away. But the intention behind the writing to you was just to say thank you. And
Mhm.
I, again, want to just say thank you for putting this out there.
Yeah, I mean, you're welcome. It took a lot of people to make it. I mean, well, not a lot of people, but five were involved in the total making of it. So shout out to them for everyone that helped out
Yeah,
and
for sure.
first for using me as a vessel to make it.
For sure. So before we dive into the concept of the short film and what kind of spurred you to write and direct this piece, I just want to understand. I love understanding what makes people tick and what makes people do what they do, and that's why I wrote you to say thank you. But I was ultimately hoping I could ask you, what caused you or prompted you to go craft this masterpiece. And so if you could step back to the followers just a little bit and tell us maybe your spiritual journey, where your unfolding started and what led you to this idea.
Sure. I mean, there's multiple ways we can go back. How far do you want me to go back with this?
maybe maybe step all the way back a little bit to your first like moment of there's got to be more than this in your life, and then kind of lead up to what eventually opened the floodgates to this guy.
Sure. Yeah. So ever since I was a kid, I've always been amazed by the universe, looking out at the stars. I grew up in Wyoming, so you can see the Milky Way from your backyard, basically. And it's something I never took for granted. And Alan Watts has a video about the mysteries of the universe and the curiosity we have as children. And it's something I feel like I never lost growing up, and I've always been the most curious person out of my friends. If I were to ask them, how they would describe me to someone else, probably the first thing they would say is curious and then maybe forgiving. Hope funny as well. And so I never feel like I had the answers I wanted, and I've always been searching, and I'm still searching for the answers. And I think curiosity is one of the most admirable traits we have as humans. And not only humans have it, some other primates have curiosity as well, some other animals. And I think it's an adorable trait that really leads one to discovery. And, you know,
That's great. I think understanding kind of that early entry, because I think most of us, especially like you said, as a young child, we're always just curious. But like you also said, it seems like some of the mammals and the humans lose that natural curiosity or inquisitiveness, and it appears you didn't. So kind of maybe fast forward then to taking that inquisitive nature that you have into maybe your later years where you started the exploration. I know in other bits and pieces I've read about you, you've mentioned that you've toyed over the years with possibly some natural psychedelics and things that you've had of interest that opened your consciousness a little bit. So maybe tell us a little bit about that.
okay, sure. Um, Yeah, so growing up, I never lost the curiosity, and it's something that I feel has gotten more of a burn in my soul as I've gotten older. And I feel most people lose the curiosity, but I'm more curious than ever. And I really value learning now. And I absolutely hated school. And now, like, I kind of wish I can go back and go through school again because I just love soaking in information and learning about how things work. I'm really fascinated with science. And I feel like science is one of the most beautiful methods to fuel curiosity and to give you some answers, and which is why I love space and like exploration so much. I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk because I feel like he's a little kid who never lost his curiosity, and now he's run some really good businesses to where he has the funds to explore the universe, like go to Mars, hopefully soon, and all that stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, are you familiar with Carl Sagan?
a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm a really big fan of his as well, and Neil deGrasse Tyson,
Yeah.
probably two of the most curious people, alongside Alan Watts, that I look up to, who are um, celebrity figures. And so throughout high school, I didn't do any drugs. I didn't really drink. It was really built into me from an early age that I needed to avoid that stuff.
Hmm.
And I grew up in a fairly Christian environment, not so much through my family, but through my best friends. I grew up playing in a Christian rock band, so I was surrounded by a lot of religion, and they're the most beautiful humans I've ever met. But I never felt drawn or connected to Christianity. And oftentimes, when I'd speak about my curiosity and not always wanting to know about life after death and wondering if there's more to this, I never got the right answers from them. And
Yeah.
hearing the gospel never really fulfilled me. So when I went into college is when tried like marijuana for the first time, and I didn't really feel like that answered any questions. If anything, it probably gave me a lot more questions because it's the first time I saw reality from a slightly different
Mm.
angle, and I was very curious and like, wow, there's more than one perspective besides my own, and it's possible to shift your perspective into something entirely with just a substance. And now, like, I haven't smoked weed probably in 4 or 5 years, but I can still go back to that mindset without the substance, which is great. And I feel like I can step out of my own mind, if you will, to look at the world from new perspectives now because of that. Um,
Very cool.
yeah,
And then that kind of led a little bit further and closer to um, this short film and some exploration that you did that I heard you mention in another interview. So maybe take us to what that was that really seemed to open the door a whole new level.
sure. So the the first moment that I feel like I can like look back on and think, hey, this really influenced my whole journey into making this film. Obviously, there's so many steps through the butterfly effect, but the one that's like really special to me. Do you know who Alejandro Aranda is? I might be
No.
pronouncing. So he's an artist I met in Los Angeles at this kind of tiny desk style concert. It's probably like 50 people go. And it's really cool because it's an anonymous location, anonymous artist, and you sign up to go. They give you the location like an hour before, and you go to it. So it's really spontaneous and really fun. Met this kid there. He was the sweetest soul I probably ever met, and he played a song that I was absolutely in love with. I'm like, this is the most beautiful song I've ever heard in my entire life. I'm like, dude, we have to record this. And this is right when I moved to LA for music production. So I'm thinking, man, this kid's going to be my ticket to success. And I wasn't thinking of it like selfishly, like, yeah, I want to record him for my own, success. But it was more just like, I just wanted everyone in the world to hear this kid because he was so talented. So fast forward, we're messaging a little bit on Instagram. And at this time, he probably had 200 followers. He had absolutely no following. but I couldn't stop thinking about this song. And I got busy. I was dating someone, and it just got kind of put on the back burner. And I never really followed up with trying to record his song. And then one day I'm scrolling through Facebook, and all of a sudden I see this American Idol audition, and he's on it, and he's playing the song that I heard. And I'm like, oh, this is going to be a hit. Long story short, he blew up. The audition got millions and millions of views. He got second place in American Idol, got a record deal, and blew up to close to like 800,000 followers in just like a month or so. And I lost contact with him. He's like so famous now. My messages are just getting drowned, and obviously has a record deal. So I lost the opportunity to record him, and I was so bummed. And this is at the point where I was getting really burnt out in the music industry in LA, and it was just really political and cutthroat. So at that point, I decided I'm going to quit the music industry. I was just like so burnt out and like really hurt from losing this opportunity. And I just saw it as my missed opportunity to become successful in the music industry, in which I romanticized ever since I was like 12 years old to make it in the music industry.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So, but at the time, I'm like, this is absolutely terrible. But looking back, it's one of the best experiences that happened to me, because after a couple months, I got over it, and I play guitar too, and I just love the song. So I was thinking, okay, I'm going to learn his song. It's really beautiful. And as I'm learning it, I'm having a great time, but I'm still salty. I'm like, man, I really wish I could have recorded this. But
I love it.
yeah, I was still just kind of yelling at the universe at that point. And but I learned it. It's really hard, and it's in a really beautiful tuning I never played in before. And learning that song enabled me to write the song I wrote for Last Day on Earth. It's in the same tuning and uses a couple of the same chords, and I just kind of refigured it and made it like a different style.
Wow.
And yeah, so that whole experience of that failing allowed me to have my own experience to have this vision for the short film, which was initially based off the song I wrote. I got my guitar. I can show you.
Oh, I love that. So cool.
Yeah, so I'll show you like part of the song that he wrote, just so you can like maybe find the similarities.
Yeah.
I haven't played this in a minute, so it might be a little rusty.
All right. It's fun just getting to see you do your thing.
Sure. Oh, shit. That's like part of it, right?
Yeah, so
really
beautiful.
He has like the most beautiful voice singing over it, which is what makes it. And I always like loved this chord because it had like these clashing notes with that chord, which is like the clashing with the beautiful, and like both of those put together make for like something to be desired and something that feels like unresolved and unfinished because of the clashing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does actually. And I feel it when you were playing it. I could feel it. I could feel it's very palpable, the feeling behind it, not just the music.
Yeah. So mine's different, but I use this literally the exact same chord, but I'll play you what I ended up writing. Yeah, so that's kind of like the beginning of it. And once this comes in, I just loved that so much, and I ended up spending like days just playing that over and over because it made me feel something I've never felt before.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
I
almost
guess like
like it's like
like
a God tone or something, right? It's almost like
yeah,
I don't know, it's like an invitation. That's how it feels like when I saw the short film and that music started playing, I just felt invited to follow the character. So you nailed it. I mean, it really did, I think, what you were attempting to do.
yeah. So the feeling it gives me is like it's so hard to explain, but the best way I can describe it, it's like it's gonna be okay, even though like you're sad. Like it's okay to die, if that makes sense. Is what I get from it. It's okay to pass on, and it's and just kind of like hauntingly beautiful. I don't know. It's in. I have the Alan Watts quote at the end of the film during the credits, and he asks or he says like, if you ask Bach what is the meaning, he says, listen, that's the meaning. So whenever I try to explain it, I feel it's like trying to bite your own teeth, or or look at yourself in the eye. Like it's impossible. So it's better just to have the music speak for itself and try not to
Ugh, I
give it
got
to.
chills when you just said that. Literally, I just got chills.
Yeah. So yeah,
So
that's the part I like is
beautiful, Christian.
just let the music, whatever makes you feel that's right. And then the ending credits, after you have like the sad stuff playing, it takes a happier note. And this is probably actually my favorite part of the song. Yeah.
Mhm.
Uh,
Oh my gosh, yes. Everything about that song. Geez, like just with the short film alone, it's so captivating. But
thanks.
what could be done with that music too? I mean, I just feel like somebody's going to want to steal and grab that and use it somewhere else in a motion picture. It does so much. I can't even say, but thank you for literally playing that for us. I wasn't expecting that. So that's such a blessing. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And like I said, I feel like I can't take credit for writing it. I feel like music is discovery because that, like, if you had a guitar 5,000 years ago, technically that could have been played at any moment in time. So, like, I love looking down at the fretboard or a piano and just thinking, like, every song that will ever be written or could be written could be played right now. So, whenever you do write something, it's not really you writing it, it's you discovering it.
Yeah,
That's that already could have been played.
I love that. So, okay. So the music came to you, came through you.
Mhm.
Now tell us where this whole imagery was birthed and where you went to do it and how it all unfolded. I just want to hear everything.
Yeah, sure. So I wrote that song probably, I'd say maybe like 2 months or so before I did a trip to Washington. And I was in a relationship that was failing. So that song actually served a few different things for me because it felt like the ending. Like whenever something ends, I just love playing that song because it's just like self-reflective and really gets you in your head to, analyze everything about what you're experiencing and to just live in the moment. But right after that relationship, I was needing something spontaneous. So did a solo trip to Washington, just a 2-day thing, Saturday, Sunday. Went to the airport really early on Saturday and took a flight out to Washington. And I wasn't sure what I was going to do there yet. So once I landed at the airport, I started looking up places to go. And I saw that there's a rainforest near Forks, Washington in Olympic National Park. Like, oh crap, like this would be so sick. I've always wanted to go to a rainforest. I didn't even know that there was rainforests in America, I just always assumed that rainforests were like tropical. So that's why I learned about temperate rainforests and all that. I'm like, this is so cool. So drove 4 hours there. So I got a rental car, and I was diving into mushrooms a little bit before this trip, did them here and there. And I'd say it always made me feel connected with nature, but never did I feel like I had a spiritual awakening or anything that's like I'm thinking about it a lot the next day, right? So they have what's called a heroic dose, which is 5.5 grams of mushrooms. And I had 11 grams. So I was going to try to do a heroic dose 2 days in a row because I'm crazy like that. So I get to the rainforest. I'm like, this is the most beautiful place I've ever been so far. Like all the trees had clouds like stuck on them, and there was no one there really because surprisingly enough, like during the rainy season there, not a lot of people go. And I'm thinking, well, this is a rainforest, that you'd think that they would try to go when it's raining to experience what the forest is like in its most natural state.
Yeah.
And also it's 2020, so it's a little bit after the main lockdown. This was end of September of 2020. I did this trip, and everyone's kind of yelling at me. It's like, hey, you probably shouldn't be traveling at this point. And I was a little bit reckless, I feel, at that point, but I needed an adventure. So,
Yeah.
so I go into the forest. I do half the mushrooms. I spend about 45 minutes in there, and it's like starting to kick in, and I'm on top of the world. I've never been so happy. I'm thinking like it's so crazy that I'm here. Like just a couple days ago, like I had no plans to be here, and all of a sudden I'm 1,000 miles away, and the most beautiful place on the planet that I feel like no one's talking about.
Yeah.
Like I don't know how that place is on the front page news every day because it's just so magical. So I'm feeling great. So I said, fuck it. I'm just gonna take the rest of my mushrooms and send it. Let's see how it goes. So I do it. If I regretted it for about 30 minutes because it was really, really intense. And have you ever done DMT?
Well, just naturally, when I had my near death experience, I had a DMT obviously release as I was leaving the body, but not as a substance outside of that. No.
Yeah. So for a bit, I was on this trail. Luckily, there was like no one around because I feel like I probably would have like maybe spiraled into a bad trip if I was around a lot of people just because of getting self conscious in the mental state I was in.
Yeah.
But it felt like a DMT trip all of a sudden, and I like couldn't really tell if my eyes were open or if they were closed, and everything was exploding so much. So I was incredibly disoriented. So I go off the trail a little bit, and then I find like a tree to sit by, and I just meditate there for a bit. And I feel like I'm just becoming one with the forest, and I started like envisioning like what does it feel like to die? What does it feel like to have your soul pass on? And I feel like I was taught that I don't need my body to continue on to like I learned that I'm just a point of awareness that can be in many different states and in many different places, and then I don't need my body to experience that. And as I'm like sitting down, and I was also learning on the way through this trail that there's what's called nurse logs. So when a dead tree falls in the forest, new seedlings will grow out of that dead tree because the
Wow.
competition is so fierce. Because literally everywhere you look, besides like the walking path, is so lush and full of life. There's not an ounce of ground that is not covered in green. So the only place some of these seedlings have to grow is on top of dead trees. So you'll see like newly fallen dead trees with little baby trees growing out. Then you'll see, trees that are 1,000 years old that fell down, but they have giant towering trees growing out of them. And then like all their roots are wrapped around this dead tree.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So like just like the mix of new seedlings, old dead trees, newly dead trees, just all one as like a forest made me like realize that like the polarity we see as life and death as being like two separate things can like coexist in like harmony as one. And I don't know how to put that into words, but it just showed me that like there's the other side of the coin that we don't always see, which is death, which I feel very much is just as powerful as life. And not in like a negative in a negative way how we perceive death. It's just it's symbiotic, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah. I think you articulated that beautifully as someone who's had an out of body experience. You just nailed it for people who haven't, and really landed on something pivotal, which is this dualistic experience we seem to be having perhaps isn't against us. It's actually for us. But, if we're in the mindset or leaning towards that which is negative, that may be the outcome, yet the positivity is also right there, right?
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. So yeah, I probably like meditated for an hour and a half, 2 hours at that point underneath this tree, and it's raining. I'm getting soaked, but like I'm so happy, you know.
You're in a rainforest, so what the heck,
Yeah, I'm
right?
like, this is so sick. And I was just like, I was hugging so many trees and, looking at like playing with like bugs on the ground and, you
Love
know,
it.
and it was like real since it was raining, it was like really foggy too. So it was like very enchanting. And, I'll give you some footage of me there. Like there's some, you won't see me there, but some shots I got from that very day I had this experience.
Awesome.
Yeah. And, God, it was so beautiful. I want to go back right now because it's the perfect time. Fall. It's like my favorite season there.
So, okay, so we've got a song, we've got a moment happening, the relationship's crumbling, you've, taken the spontaneous trip, you've ingested this momentous amount of mushrooms, and you're exploding into the beauty of it all.
Yeah.
Then what? What happens? When does this moment come?
Yeah. So we're building up to it. So, um, like a thought I had like in this forest, and I don't know why it made me so sad, but everything like I was saying is so lush. There's like no spot on the ground besides the path that isn't full of life. And I find it funny how wherever humans are, I was looking at the trail is where death is. Nothing's growing on the trails.
Hmm,
It's almost as if like we as a species, wherever we come in the masses, there's no signs of life. You know? I
interesting.
don't know if
I
that's
like
like too
that.
dark to think, but it's just like everywhere I look, and obviously you need a trail to walk through this forest, but stomping on everything that could have been there did make me sad, and I know I'm very much part of the problem because I was there preventing stuff from growing. But it seemed like a very pivotal thought at the time, especially on the mushroom trip, just thinking at this point I'm having a very negative response to how I feel about humans. At this point, I'm like getting kind of angry, especially since driving into this forest before I got there, there's just so much deforestation.
Yeah.
So I was already like kind of sad and mad at humans like when I got there. Um, so I'm walking on this trail some more, and I hit this point where there's this like beautiful river, and then this is where I feel like I had like the most beautiful views, and you can just see like rolling mountains of trees, and but like all the clouds are just stuck on the cliffs. And I have some drone shots at the end of my film. The very last drone shot you see is from this very same spot. And so yeah, it was just incredibly beautiful. And at this point I'm thinking, okay, it's getting like fairly close to sunset. So I'm like, I got to go back. And the high is starting to come down a little bit from the mushrooms, but I feel like I had learned so much, and I was just stuck in my head because I'm trying to digest all the feelings I have of like what it means to be human, what it means to be alive. And I started like really thinking about death. And I was just like thinking at the time, I'm just like really ready to die. Like if this is my last day on earth, like I'd be so happy. It'd be exactly how I'd want to spend it. Just doing something really spontaneous by myself and learn something about the world. And I
Yeah.
feel like I just learned so much from that forest. So I leave and get back to the parking lot. I start driving. I'm like, oh man, I really want to listen to the song I wrote, and I had recorded it. Um, and I'm driving up this hill, and the rain had just stopped right as I started driving. And I'm listening to the song, and all of a sudden, like I feel like I get taken over and have this vision of this old man walking through this forest. And later on, I started when I wrote the film, I ended up having him start in the cabin and do a bunch of other stuff. But when I first like really thought of it, it's him walking through this forest, and he's just one with nature and just on top of the world. And at the at the time, I didn't have the idea of him planting a seed in
Mm,
the deforested area. I just wanted him to plant a seed and it sprout and he pass on.
mm.
And I just thought it was like really beautiful thinking like him walking through this forest and basically he's the one who planted this forest was kind of like my first idea for it. He's like, oh, why would someone plant a seed in a forest that's already so full of life? You know, so it just seemed like kind of not ironic, but there's a word for it. It just seemed like something someone wouldn't do.
Right.
hmm But the very first time the seed sprouted in my head, you know, like when I had the idea, is I hit the top of the hill, and as I'm driving up the hill, I can like see the clouds up in the sky, and they're all super orange from the sun setting.
Mm.
The very second I hit the top of the hill, um, the seed sprouted in my head, and then the sun came out, and at that very moment, I felt like this energy take over me, and the sun turned into this kaleidoscopic flower of like love and energy, and it was like blossoming and waving, and I saw all these like fractal shapes and patterns that I feel like don't exist in nature. You know,
Yeah.
it's very psychedelic, and I instantly started crying like a baby. It felt like I discovered the meaning of life and or the purpose for my life. And I pulled over to the side of the road and just I'm like looking down at my hands that are shaking. I'm like, how the heck did that happen? Because it was such at the time seemed like such a coincidence. It was impeccable timing. Like how could something so miraculously beautiful in the physical world align with something so magical that happened in my mind at the exact same time? It was like an epiphany for this idea, and boom, the most beautiful sight I've ever seen. It was just rolling hills of like endless forest.
So powerful. Wow.
Later on, when I started writing it, I'm like, oh, this would be like really special if you planted a seed in a deforested area, you know?
So it was writing you, the script was writing you.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. So I feel like I can't take any credit for it. It's literally just, you know, experiences that write your life, you know? And I'm starting to learn in the most beautiful way. And I feel like this is something humans will argue to the end of time. And maybe spiritually awakened people are more open to this idea about free will.
Mhm.
And I used to think the phrase "everything happens for a reason" was such like bullcrap and like an escape for really the unknown and not knowing why things happen. But I really do think things happen for a reason, and it's all due to the butterfly effect and just cause and effect. And feel like I have free will. It feels so real to me, but the way things line up make it seem otherwise.
Yes.
So it's the most beautiful illusion ever because there's so many factors that like we're unaware of that create this random life we live in, you know?
I love that you're touching on that. I literally just did a video for my followers about free will and this avatar thinking it's making all the choice. And so I'd love to hear your thoughts. I mean, keep feeding into this, but I want you to loop into how that's been digestible when you return back to your normal life. So don't let us forget to cover that, but keep going with this. This is fabulous.
I mean, I'm still like stuck on it. You know, it's like it's so hard because I feel like right now, like I feel like I'm at this point and at this moment, I feel like I am in control of every word, every thought, me moving my hands, yada yada. Like I'm making all these decisions. But when you're in like deep meditative states or sometimes psychedelics, you start to feel like you are the observer of your thoughts and you're not your thoughts. And
Yes.
when you're in that state, like you feel like you become a point of awareness that is much, much older than however old you are. It feels like it's like infinity, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
Like you've always been conscious and aware as opposed to getting lost in the illusion that is life.
Yeah,
It really is the most beautiful illusion. Like it's genius, really.
it is. So you
Yeah.
have this experience, you have this unfolding, you have this moment where you pull over and it just the moment God, the universe speaks to you in a way that you've just felt like you've opened up. Now what?
Yeah, so I was flying by the seat of my pants and I had no plan really. So I had no idea where I was going to stay and I just started driving. I'm like, "Oh, I'm just on top of the world." I was so happy after that moment. And which was interlaced with coming back down to reality because I feel like I literally got sent to heaven and back somehow in my mind in the experience I had in this forest. And here I am coming back into the real world. I'm starting to drive into smaller towns, seeing like deforested areas, and just thinking like, man, like how can there be such this beautiful experience in the midst of such destruction and chaos? Like I was just really confused by it. I'm still confused by why the world is the way it is. And
Yeah.
it's not, sunshine and rainbows like 24/7,
Yeah.
just living in paradise. But, I suppose that's the yin to the yang.
Hmm.
Can't have good without the bad. And here we are experiencing equal amounts of both, depending on which one you're tuned into.
Yeah.
And so I didn't have a hotel or anything. And I start driving through Forks, Washington. You ever watch Twilight?
Oh yeah, I've been through Forks. I love that whole area.
Yeah, so I was actually like I love Twilight actually. So I romanticized that movie so much. Yeah, and I think it's just me being like a total hippie tree hugger about it. And it's because like literally that entire area is like not the natural forest that used to be there because it's a bunch of tree farms now. So just thinking going from Hoh Rainforest to where it was this old growth forest to now it's just this town with like a bunch of trailers and such with um, giant patches of like cut down trees and all that. It just seemed like so out of place, and I don't know. It was making me sad.
What
So
is
I
it?
love,
Juxta, I never get this word right. Juxtaposition.
yeah, exactly, yeah. So and yeah, the sun was setting, so I'm like, oh, I should probably find a hotel to stay at. So I drove along the ocean. I found one that was like right on the beach, which was really awesome. And I'm wanted to call all my friends and tell them about this experience. And then when I talked to everyone, it just, when you try to explain something, it never comes out how you intend it.
Yeah.
And it never sounds as cool as what you experienced. I'm thinking, man, this is frustrating, because I just wanna show
You
everyone
just
this.
had your whole life explode in front of your eyes, but no one gets it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
everyone's like, oh, yeah, yeah, that's cool. Oh, beautiful. And like, I totally get it. I don't expect them to, couldn't expect them to be in my head at that moment to see the universe align in such a beautiful way, and especially when you're in such like a psychedelic state. um so yeah, then that was the challenge, like, hey, how do I bring this back to life? And it's not so much I wanted to recreate what I experienced, but recreate the vision I had during my experience. And so when I get home, I'm like, okay, so I want to make this a film. All my friends are making fun of me. It's like, dude, you don't even watch movies, you know? And I still don't. I'm writing a film with my friend Sabrina right now, and she keeps making all these references to all these movies. And I haven't seen a single one of them. Like, I haven't seen Star Wars or whatnot, but I've seen Twilight. So,
There you go. There you go. You had what you needed in your belt of tools.
but in hindsight, I probably would have been way better off watching a bunch of movies before I made mine because I'm learning a lot now in the art of storytelling to create emotion and to create tension and character build that I was so clueless about when I was writing it and
Mhm.
filming it. Um, so one day I would love to recreate this film with more experience and create more of a love and slow down the pace with this character so you really get to know him. He makes more decisions, it's more intimate. He spends a lot more time in the forest and all that jazz. So,
So cool. I want to ask you, because I don't want to skip over a couple of the details in the film. You enter with this character. Obviously, you've explained, what the character's about, and we'll make sure the full short film link is in the description, folks. So don't be afraid to pause it now, watch that, and then come back to this. But tell us a little bit about some of the really neat little nooks and crannies you've hidden in that short film that are so special to your life. They're even separate from what happened that day. I'd love to hear why some of the things appeared the way that they did in the short film.
sure. So the one that comes to mind um, is the book he's reading, is my sister's poetry book.
No
And
way.
she is, oh, hold on. I can't.
Yeah, you gotta show us.
So she is the most beautiful human I've ever met. I love her to absolute pieces. But if you can see that.
Oh, I love it. I love the whole title, and I love the the um the beautiful graphics.
Yeah, so she's super awesome. So she's had this book out probably about 3 years now. And beforehand, she put so much work into getting this published, and I didn't realize how much work there is to be involved in getting a book published. But kudos to her for doing that. It's really awesome. But one day she called me and she was like really upset. She's like, "Oh, I'm really sad that my book isn't doing as well as it should." So I try to buy a few every month and then I give them out to like random people, write little notes. And
Oh, I love that.
so typically, I'd say the majority of it is like give it to homeless people because she has like a really soft spot for that. Or if there's like a random, those book outdoor like bookshelves that you can take a
Yeah,
book.
the libraries people build. I love that.
Yeah, so I leave them there all the time and give them to random people I meet. So planting
Yeah.
seeds, beautiful.
Yeah. Hey, why don't we do something fun for our followers who are seeing this? Maybe if you're really wanting to support your sister and we're wanting to support both of you, maybe guys, if you want to order one of the books Christian has and he signs it, and sends it off to you, that would be something super fun. So we'll make sure to put the information in the description of this video as well, how you can get the book. And if you want an extra special signed one by Christian, we can figure that out too.
Yeah, I can read you a little passage.
Please do.
Yeah, so this one's titled "Every Thought You Have is a Seed," so it's quite fitting for the film.
Yeah.
We create our own reality. This is truth. Yet deep within, we often feel powerless. How can this be? The thoughts we have entertained have served to disempower us, to bring darkness, to blind us from our potential. Yet many of us still hear that small voice within, yearning, yearning, yearning for reunion with the truth. Even still, it has been so hard to fight the booming voice of condemnation and criticism that one tears us down and oops, skip the page, and is full of skepticism.
Mm.
Yeah.
God, that says so much in so few words. Oh
Yeah.
my gosh, your sister's as powerful as you are. What a
He's,
duo.
he's super awakened, so this whole book is beautiful.
I love it. So,
Hmm.
what other little nooks and crannies do you have tucked away in that short film?
Yeah, I don't really have many Easter eggs, I feel. Um,
Well, the song you pulled together.
yeah,
Um,
so yeah, I have that song at the end, and ever since I had that song written, I knew exactly how I wanted to cut it, with like um I'll play this one more time. But I wanted when the dissonance that we were talking about earlier
yeah.
like hits, The very first time that plays is when he's looking out at the deforested area, and then the next shot when it hits again is the drone shot showing the deforested area. So I knew the second that I had had that play, I wanted those shots, and I knew the moment I had this idea for the film, that the thumbnail it has is the old man like looking out. I knew I wanted that to be the thumbnail, and I manifested like, man, I just like this thumbnail meant so much to me, and I think that's why it kind of was successful on YouTube. Um,
Yeah.
is it like oh, last day on Earth, and it's this old man, like what's going on? And I always like pictured the award-winning laurels next to his head, one on each side.
Yeah.
The very second I won the second award, like 2 days later, I ended up posting it to YouTube. And I was waiting for that second award until I posted it.
It's done amazing. So we don't want to skip over that. I love everything about this. What were some of the challenges you faced in being a first time short film writer?
Sure. So, like I was saying, like I don't really watch movies, so I wasn't entirely sure of the process, but I did have one advantage I feel that really helped me out is one, naturally being a creative, a musician, but two, I also have experience in audio. So I've done sound for other people's short films before, done some sound for commercials. So all the sound effects you hear in the film are re-recorded and or sound effects pulled from the internet to create the environment. So I
Mm.
felt very confident in being able to do that. So that gave me some confidence moving forward. Um, but I had no idea how to use a camera. And so I needed to hire a cinematographer. So I was so naive at the time, and I feel like I'm still naive in other ways, but a little less than I was at the time. And I'm so excited about this idea. Like I couldn't stop telling people. Everyone I talked to, I'm like, I want to tell you this idea I had, or like this vision I had in this forest. And I learned the hard way that people don't really care about like what you go through in life half the time, or what you want to do in life, or your goals. And I had reached out to maybe close to 10 videographers that one either didn't respond to me or talk to and didn't take me seriously. Because
Mm.
one, I had no experience, also had no, I didn't have a storyboard. All I did was have like, actually before this, all I was doing was telling them, like, hey, I just want to tell you this idea. And so like no one wanted to do it. And I had like enough money to fund this film because I luckily at the time had a pretty good job. So I'm like, okay, well, I'll pay whatever within reason to make this. And, but, if you can't back your creative ideas with something tangible for people to hold on to and to see, they're not really going to want to be a part of it. I've
Right.
learned. So I learned, hey, I need to be more serious. So I started with, okay, I need to write down every detail of the film. And I had it all time stamped for how long I wanted each shot to be, what he's doing, how it aligns with the music, where at in the music, this shot's hitting what angle. So I got that all down, and I had that as a template to send to people, and they still weren't taking me seriously.
Mm.
And I'm like, okay, this is really frustrating. And I had talked to this, I don't want to name drop, but it's a page I've been following for a long time. They had probably like 500,000 followers, and they're located in Seattle, and they do videography for people. And their whole marketing campaign is like, hey, we're going to bring like your project to life. So I'm thinking, okay, like I can fit that role. I want my project to be brought to life. And I had talked to them, and they said that they would do it, but later on backed out of it because they thought I was going to be too controlling in a way, because they
Gotcha.
wanted, yeah, so they're saying they like, oh, like our normal way of doing things, we want to take your idea, we'll work with it, and then we'll bring it to life. But I had like every detail like planned, like how I want this shot, and I told them like, yeah, I want to direct this, I want to, like, I know how I want everything set up from camera angles and all that. And they're like, yeah, we think you're going to be difficult to work with, so we want to back out.
Well, you were spared, right?
Yeah. So, but I mean, later I've learned that I feel what did hold me back with this film was maybe being I don't want to say I was like completely stuck in my vision, but I wasn't as receptive to hearing like people's ideas for it, because I'm like, man, I'm the one who had like the spiritual awakening experience with it. Like I just trusted it so much. Um, but lesson learned. I'm still proud of it.
Yeah, and you birthed this baby. I mean, you birthed this baby. So imagine a mom birthing a baby and saying, okay, I've birthed it, now take it and do what you will with it. I get it. I get you wanting to protect it. So kudos to you.
Yeah. So I ended up reaching out to someone else, and he's actually the videographer for my favorite band. And he lives in Seattle. He does, well, at the time he was doing photography for the band. And I reached out to him. I'm like, hey, like, I love your work. I'm just wondering if you know anyone in Seattle that could shoot this video. And he was like, oh, I could shoot it. And he was super kind, super awesome. And yeah, so I decided to work with him. And yeah, so I finally had the cinematographer, and he's like, hey, you gotta draw a storyboard. So like, I love your description, so we need an actual storyboard. So I got together with my friend Dusty, and we wrote out most of the shots. And I feel like a lot of it was a waste of time because I knew so much of what I wanted to shoot that I didn't need the storyboard. And when we were shooting, I didn't use the storyboard at all. But I feel making a storyboard just shows you that you are serious, and it's just something cool to show people. I feel, because if
And
you
you
have,
have it now. You have it now forever. It's memorialized with the
I think I
film.
threw part of it away, and I'm really sad, like on complete accident. So I'm like really bummed, but I have photos of it, so it's still cool.
So cool. So
Yeah.
cool.
Hmm.
Well, those are great learning lessons. I love, people like Richard Branson from Virgin say successful failures, right? And it sounds like that's the way you're looking at some of these things, like even saying you would love to step back after your next, which we'll talk about next, but step back and maybe revisit this particular short film again and return to this baby and build on it. But um, before we skip ahead to what you're working on next, you closed out the short film with one of my absolute favorites by Alan Watts.
Mhm.
And that's something we have in common. I just adore the man and I love listening to him. He's someone I'll put his stuff on Alexa in the morning and just listen to the way he speaks because it's like music. So tell us a little bit about how you picked that particular clip and your relationship with Alan Watts.
Yeah. So I found this video on YouTube called The Mystery, and I feel like it's probably one of the most beautiful videos ever edited. It's probably like 10 minutes, I think. And it basically starts with Alan Watts talking about like, ever since I was a little boy, I've always thought existence was weird. It's like, isn't it odd? Like we're just like doing all this stuff, and like I'm like, that's exactly how I felt and still feel like existence is super weird. And I think that was the first video I ever saw of him, because it's titled just The Mystery, Alan Watts, and it had like a really catchy thumbnail. And like I geek out about, the universe and the mind and psychology. So that's probably why I got recommended to me on YouTube. And I absolutely fell in love with this video. And this was probably, I would guess, maybe like a year before even having this idea for this short film. But I always had it in mind. Like there's this beautiful quote at the end that I felt like just wrapped up the film so well. And he says like, if you ask Spock what is the meaning, listen, that is the meaning. And um, ever since I had the credits, I just like always envisioned him narrating over it.
See, the world is a musical phenomenon. Good music never refers to anything except the music itself. If you ask Bach, what is your meaning? He say, listen. That's the meaning. Giraffes are giraffing, trees are treeing, stars are starring, clouds are clouding. Rain is raining. And if you don't understand, look at it again. And people are people. Wow.
And I originally, when I made the film, I didn't have any intention of using Alan Watts. And the first part where the old man's reading the book, I had another quote in there. It was like I took it off the internet from CNN, and it was two news anchors talking about climate change and President Trump.
Mm-hmm.
And I forgot exactly what it was saying, but basically saying how like climate change is like really bad, and they didn't say Trump, but talking about how the president denies it and all that stuff. And it ends with like what could you say to us to prove us otherwise about climate change, and then it cuts to the guy walking through the forest and all that. And I loved it. It was like so perfect, but I felt like with them mentioning climate change, I am in full support of. I'm not supporting climate change, but like I believe and understand the science behind it. And the fact that they make reference to President Trump, I was feeling like, hey, this might cut my audience in half.
Yeah.
And I didn't want anyone from either, I didn't want to make it political.
Got
And
it.
so I decided like, hey, maybe it's good to use Alan Watts. And I was unsure like, hey, can I legally use Alan Watts? So I contacted Mark Watts, his son.
Yes.
Yeah, so I had a conversation with him, told him about the film, and he's like, yeah, like we're actually like working on this right now. Like we're losing, I forgot how much they said. I think it was like $50,000 or $60,000 in revenue a week from unlicensed use of Alan Watts's talks, because there's been zero copyright claims against anyone who's posted anything on YouTube.
Wow.
Yeah, and he says, but it's like he says like we care about it, but we also understand that the rise of the internet has brought my dad back to life, is what he said. And so they're trying to find ways to make it like mutually beneficial for creators and for them to actually make money off of it still. And I was telling him, hey, I just want to use a few lines. It's not going to be narrated over the full film. He's like, hey, that should be okay. Told him the film's under 5 minutes. Like, okay, yeah, you won't have any issues. If you make anything over 5 minutes, then you're going to use narrating over. Like, we'll have to work out a deal. So if I ever do anything in the future, I'll have to make sure to get permission. So yeah, and yeah, I used him because I feel like he's the one that I turn to when I'm trying to learn more about life and am feeling sad, or like I immediately associate Alan Watts with dying,
Mm.
like a beautiful way. And because I feel like he just makes it like so easy and like so natural to where like you don't have to be scared. So I thought it'd be just fitting to have him narrate something so beautiful after my character passes on.
Perfect. And
Yeah.
you picked the perfect quote too. And it's funny because after my near death experience, I started saying, because I had that same awareness you talk about where trees are treeing, people are peopling. And when I heard him use those same words, I got chills all over my body. And it was just another validation that this isn't coming through Kelly. The fact that those words were coming out of my mouth and his before I'd even heard it, the collective consciousness is what's speaking. It's not this body. So it resonated so beautifully when I heard it in your film. So I just, again, it was another touching point where I was like, I've got to talk to this guy. Like he's hitting all of my buttons in the ways that aligned to my near-death experience. So I just, any other thoughts on the short film before we talk about what's coming next?
Yeah, I mean, just give a shout out to my friend Dusty and Luis. They really helped me out with the music. So the piano and stuff you hear, like in the beginning, him walking through the forest. My friend Luis made all that. Dusty helped me out with the storyboard, and he orchestrated all the additional instruments you hear on top of the acoustic guitar at the end.
Wow.
Yeah, you can hear some other instruments. They're kind of tucked in there, but they really do make a difference on it. So big shout out to them for helping out. And then the actor, Stephen Kelsey, he did a great job.
He sure did. He was adorable. I was in love with him by the end. And the part you captured, the essence of him that was so sweet that I backed up a few times was him sitting there eating his sandwich, and just the eyes that he was doing in that moment was so tender. He looked like an old man and a 3-year-old physicality, just so sweetly eating his sandwich and like taking it all in. And I just felt that so much.
Yeah, I love that shot. Like, I had no filmmaking experience before that, but I had the idea like on set um, to like we are filming him eating lunch. I'm like, oh, this just seems like, I don't know, weird. And then I just had the idea of having two, like, I don't know if you remember, there's like a view from him from the side where he takes off his backpack and swings it around, and the camera's panning up. And right as he takes off the backpack, we have a log there that like blocks the entire frame. So the camera comes up, goes over the log, and it cuts once it hits the top of the log to a new angle, and it's it coming up from the front of him taking a bite into the sandwich.
So perfect. It was like, I totally pick up on those little details. So I just want to applaud you, because that, and also the scene of him, the face that you mentioned, that captivated like moment we all just, we all feel when we see that scene. So you just did such an amazing job.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate
Yeah.
it.
So next project, without giving, I know this is very private, but whatever you're comfortable to share so we can support you on that.
What I've learned is like, yes, we should be careful with our ideas because like maybe we are afraid of people stealing them or whatever. But I was just actually listening to Elon Musk. He made a quote. He was talking about his rockets that he's making, and the interviewer was asking him about the patents on his rockets. Like, we don't have any patents. Patents are for the weak or the stupid. Is like, how do you expect to advance society from a patent? Like, yeah, we created this technology, but we're creating it for humanity, not for ourselves and not for our business.
Love it.
And that's so beautiful. And he did the same thing with Tesla when he created, I mean, not just him, but like the whole team of Tesla created the technology for those batteries and like the communication. Like, they share everything, you know,
Yeah.
like even though it helps their competition, like he knows it's better for humanity. And
Love it.
so with this film, I feel like her and I are going to be more vocal about what we're doing and why we're doing it. And I had, so I met this girl, Sabrina, at a film club. I saw her on TikTok. She had a TikTok video blow up about her showing her short film at a film club. And, she made her second short film. And it had this like really funny scene of like this teacher basically choking a teddy bear and slamming it and taping it to a wall. Is really funny. And the video got close to 1 million likes, and she was talking about like, hey, I'm starting my own film club because my film club uh, shut down, so I'm gonna accept submissions. So I'm like, oh, like I'm gonna submit my film there, and it'll probably be good to network. I go there, and it was great, and saw her film, and her film's audio was really terrible, but the film was so good. And I'm like, I'll redo your audio for you. So,
Nice.
yeah, we worked together, redid her film and rescreened it. And, her and I just get along really well and clicked really well. So, and she's so creative, and we balance each other out in like such beautiful ways because I'm like very technical, and I feel like I can really see how like all the shots are, but she's kind of like a raw creative who can just
Mm.
throw so much things at the wall and see what sticks. And when I think and like have an idea, I have to be like lost in my mind. I have to have it like be perfect, and then I can like put it to paper. And I had this idea for the short film, and at the time it's like changed so much, but the original idea was going to have two boys out in the middle of nowhere. It's going to be a desolate desert. It's just going to be a game of them playing volleyball. And you see three shots. One shot is one boy hitting the ball, and the other shot is the other boy hitting the ball. And then there's going to be a bird's eye view looking down, and there's going to be a net separating them. So those three shots are happening. And then after some time, it's going to go back to the bird's eye view, and these kids are just having the most fun in their entire lives, just being complete children. And the bird's eye view comes out, and the camera tilts and starts to zoom out, and you see that's actually not a net. You see it's the border wall.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I wanted to capture this moment of these kids making play of something that divides them, that they're kind of ignorant of, but to them it's just something fun. But to us as, adult humans, we understand the true nature of this wall
Yeah.
and why it's there. And but I also want to invoke emotion and tap into the kid's imagination of like how utterly stupid this is to have walls that divide us. So I told Sabrina, hey, like I really want to write this next film with you. I just think you're really creative, and I think we both have resources that can benefit each other. And so we started writing it, and then it just took such a different turn. So now the premise is going to be like one naive boy alone in the desert, and we're still going to have the wall there, and we don't show the wall until the very end, so we have to develop the story. But there's actually going to be a girl instead of another boy, and they're not going to be playing volleyball, but they're going to develop this relationship from both sides of the wall.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, you don't see the wall, but so as the closer they get to each other physically and emotionally, we eventually come to the point in which we see what divides them. But the girl is actually going to be a victim of sex trafficking, and
Wow.
so the boy is going to be the super probably like they're both probably going to be like 8 or 9 years old. The boy is going to be really fun, naive, really happy boy who's just loves to play with rocks. Basically, he's had a great life, great parents. No bad bone in his body, just oblivious and naive to the world. And then the girl is going to be like this dark, haunted soul who's had an absolutely terrible life, but is longing for some sort of connection.
Mm.
And, and these characters are going to get closer to each other. But at the end, we want it to be we don't want to like sugarcoat this. We want it to be as real and raw to invoke the problem that this really is. So we're going to have the girl at the end get re-kidnapped by her capturers.
Mm.
And the boy is going to be stuck on the other side of the wall being completely helpless.
What an advocacy opportunity, right? What a message.
Yeah, so it can kill two birds with one stone. Make light of the border wall, and also another bigger issue, sex trafficking, especially with younger kids.
I love it. I love it, Christian. And we want to support you. We want to support you and Sabrina in this work. And so they're working on putting together a campaign to be able to allow people to fund this next film. And that's going to take some time. So in the interim, what Christian and I talked about previous to this is I'm going to put in the description, like I did with the sneak peek, his Venmo. And Christian is a trusting soul. If any funds come into that, they'll get platformed towards his next endeavors. But I really do want you guys to dig deep, and if you have some opportunity to give, even if it's a little bit, to help him and Sabrina have the funds, I back that through my followers 150%. So please do not be afraid to do that.
Yeah, we're thinking we're probably going to need 12 to 15,000 to do it right.
Yeah.
And luckily, a lot of the work we can like outsource ourselves. Like I know how to do audio, so we don't have to pay anyone to do that. And we got to pay for the actors and like all the special effects and all that jazz. So it does get pretty expensive. but we think we can create something really powerful with a small budget. And yeah, so I'm super excited for this one. And when I was manifesting Last Day on Earth, like I always knew it'd be Last Day on Earth award-winning short film with that thumbnail and the awards. And then this one, I just have a feeling it's going to win an Oscar. I don't mean that in like any cocky way,
No, I
um,
love it.
but I really think if we do this right and get the right people involved, and like if we can create what I'm seeing, like I really think it's can be worthy of an Oscar.
There you go. And I know you say you don't watch a lot of movies, but if you go
I'm
back
trying
in
to.
time, Good Will Hunting, right?
Mhm.
Go back to Matt Damon and Ben. God, I can't think of Ben's last name. He just married J Lo.
Affleck.
There you go. I mean, look at what they did, right? It wasn't a short film. I get it. Theirs was a full movie, but they had no budget. They were two young guys with a vision and a passion and a dream, and that's who you are. And it sounds like you've got a symbiotic relationship with Sabrina to pick each other up where you maybe have shortfalls. So that's a perfect relationship. How else can we support you? What else do you need from us?
Um, hmm.
Share the short film, you guys.
Yeah,
My
yeah.
goodness.
Yeah, straight for short film. We're still doing a giveaway for the cabin it was shot at up until New Year's Day is when I'm doing the drawing. But if you um, write a comment on how you'd spend your last day on Earth and you share it, like and subscribe, you'll be entered to win a 3-day stay at the cabin it was shot at, which
Oh,
is
you
on.
guys, you gotta do it. You gotta. I mean, this is incredible, and it not only will support, but you could win that. That's so cool that you're doing that.
Mhm. Yeah, actually, now that we're talking about the cabin, I did have some comments, and I thought about this when I was making it, and but the house is made of wood, the house he's living in, so and the land he's on technically was deforested before because like the first shot of him like leaving the cabin, it's like a sweeping panorama of him walking through uh, a meadow, a man-made meadow basically. And it is ironic that he plants a seed and this film is about deforestation and all that when he is himself guilty of the problem.
Mm,
And I originally was romanticizing like this old man being kind of perfect in the sense, but I mean, this film can be rewritten and how you interpret it all the time. So you can change how the story plays out just based on how you perceive the film. And like one way I'm perceiving it now is the old man just finally learned why and like what this issue is when he comes across it because he's probably been ignorant to that destruction his whole life. Probably never thought twice about his house being made of wood, and I think humans were so good at destroying the place. Like, you know, this table here is made of wood, like my guitar is made of wood, I have sound panels made of wood. Like everything we do is like so natural, to us. And a lot of people stand on their pedestals and call us hypocrites if we support something in which we are the very problem of. And I think that's just something society is built on, you know? Like it's so natural to us as like a species to where like we gotta change that, you know?
I love it. Just the fact that you have awareness about it and you can speak to it is so key. Wow, we covered a lot in this time, and I'm so grateful again that you've stepped away from everything going on to do this with us Christians. So,
I would
any
love.
closing items you'd like to share, or anything you'd like to wrap up with?
Hmm. This doesn't directly. I'm not affiliated with them in any way, and actually I had talked to them, seeing if they would share my film, and they told me no. But One Tree Planted, they for every dollar you spend, they'll plant a tree.
Yeah.
So I think they're a great company who um, is doing like really good for the planet. So if you have any extra funds, I would love to use whatever funds you're willing to give to help fund my short film. But if deforestation is something you really care about, donating to One Tree Planet would be a really good option.
Absolutely. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. I love everything about this. Thank you again for creating it, for birthing it, for bringing it forward for us to be aware of. Share, 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 like. And Christian, thank you.
Of
Thank you
course.
for being born.
Thank you for being